This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Geoff Mosher is here on a Thursday edition as we are 5 days away from the Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, Moshe, I don't think anybody feels any better.
No, I don't think they do, Mike. I don't think that with the injury report coming out today that there's much of a reason to feel any better about the Eagles' prospects.
Yeah, let's get into that. Generally on a Friday when Adam's here, we look right at that injury report because it comes out right around 4 o'clock on a Friday. Let's go through them real quick. Did not participate today. Start with A.J. Brown. And kind of give us your thoughts on Brown. You know, is this just, hey, he's going to miss the whole week? We hope he plays or he will play? Or is there general thought in your mind that he might not be able to play in this game?
Yeah, you know what we reported in the last Inside the Birds podcast, the one that came out yesterday morning, Adam had a note on, believed there'd be an MCL sprain that he can play through. He obviously isn't practicing. You wonder if some of that is just because it's going to take all the way up until Monday. That extra day is huge, by the way. We had a good discussion for our Patreon members with John DeFilippo, former Eagles quarterbacks coach, about just how much that one day can matter, especially for a playoff game. So it really helps. It gives him an extra time. I mean, it's a night game too, so it's almost an extra day and hours to be able to be ready. The issue you have, Mike, is that even if he plays, what percent is he playing at? If he lands awkwardly on it, is it going to hurt? I mean, it's not just like, all right, I play, I'm great. You know, it's I'm playing through something that I've got. And you've already got Devontae Smith playing through. We'll see. I guess he was on the report today, right? He practiced in full, but we know that he had an ankle.
Smith actually said he's going to play, I think.
Yeah, he's going to play, but again, you're not at 100%. So your top two perimeter playmakers not going to be 100%, not so great.
Yeah, obviously Hurts is the biggest one here. Brown, because we saw the knee and it looked pretty bad. Hurts hurt the finger, came back in the game, then admitted today he probably shouldn't have came back in the game. It's gotten worse to the point he hasn't thrown the football. I don't know. You just talked about the receivers are compromised. The quarterback is now compromised. I guess you kind of feel where this could be heading. Is this a game where they simplify things and they ran the ball 40 times against Tampa last time? Does it feel like this might have to go in that direction?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. And before that, I'll just say it is at least a little bit of good news that Cam Jurgens, who got his eye poked or something, he had an eye injury out of that game, seems to be okay now.
Yeah, he's not on the injury report at all.
Not even on the injury report, so that's good. So
by the way, real quick, Slay is a full participant. Smith was a full participant, and Swift was a full participant. Limited was Britton Covey and Jalen Hurts, and then Blankenship, Brown, and then, of course, Sidney Brown. They did not participate. Everybody else is clear and ready to go.
Right. So I kind of have been of the mindset. I had a conversation about this with Quentin Michael, too, and we were both in sync on this, that whether or not the injury – they should just be simplifying what they do to make sure that what they're doing correctly on both offense and defense. What that means on offense is, you're going to get blitzed a lot. You've struggled against the blitz. Let's get out there with 12 personnel. That makes it tough for a team to blitz you too much. Let's get RPO game going. Let's get our quick game going. So we get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands quickly, efficiently, maybe get some yards after the catch in one-on-one situations. Let's not try to sit there and act like, we're 10, like we were when we're 10-1, and we can just do some bombs away kind of things. Well, actually, they didn't even do that much this year anyway. So I think it's really important that they get back to basics, which coincides with facing a team that's going to blitz a lot anyway. So that's good. And then on defense, Mike, they have been so utterly just paralyzed by their own play calling, right, and their own play designs, that what I would recommend, not that I'm anybody, but what I really think that they need to do is just strip it down. Stop having edge rushers drop. Stop trying to do disguise and deception on the back end. Stop rotating like 50 different defensive backs in between big nickel, dime with Roby, dime with Ricks, nickel with Roby, nickel with Ringo. I would just very much simplify my personnel packages, play simple zone on first and second down, and then bring some pressure on third down. Nothing exotic, but man defense and pressure. None of this crazy stuff that they've been trying and hoping would work and has actually the only disguise and deception and confusion that this defense has done is to themselves, not the other quarterback.
Well, so and your point I think is interesting, Moshe, is that if you just play a basic strip down defense, okay, I might give up 24 points, but at least I can compete. I might be able to compete. What I'm doing now is causing me to be non-competitive. I can't even compete because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm thinking too much. I'm out of position, and teams are now exploiting me being out of position and having to think too much. If it's just, hey, you know what, let's just go back to basics. Like in Tecmo Bowl, you would just pick 4 plays. Just pick one of the 4, man. Just pick one of the 4.
Right.
I mean, they do have enough talent on defense that you would think if I didn't have to recreate a defense 11 weeks into the season that I should be competitive.
Competitive, yes. Obviously the nucleus of the talent that they have on defense is on the defensive line. But, one of their best defensive linemen going into this year and at the start of the year is Josh Sweat. He is not the player he once was. And you know how we say, can all these guys have just gotten bad overnight? Well, that's impossible. But the one guy who really jumps out at me on tape as it looks like he's a real legit step and a half slower, and he's obviously had the knee history, is Sweat. He's just not. His get off is different. Jason Navant and Quentin Michael have noticed that it sort of looks like he drags the leg a little bit on his rush. So you're starting to see Brandon Graham play a little bit more on the outside. So it's not Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick can still rush the passer and get off and has great speed. But, without Josh Sweat being that other great edge defender, they don't really have an Aaron Donald, right? They don't have a Micah Parsons. They just always had a very strong defensive line where each guy out there was a very good player. Maybe not a Hall of Fame player, but a very good player. But when you take Javon Hargrave out, he's not here anymore, and then you take Josh Sweat and you reduce his impact. And now obviously you see what Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter just, playing extra snaps. They haven't been as effective. You start to wonder about that point about, well, is this really that talented of a defense? So if they were to strip it down and play just straight up zones and simplified things, I do think they would still get beat on the back end a whole lot because they get beat by receivers. They're not dynamic. They're not quick. They're not athletic on the back end. But to your point, Mike, you're not giving them just free plays like Saquon Barkley, and Wan'Dale Robinson. There were, and somebody else had a cast. Slayton had a cast. There were like 7 plays in that Giants game that were just made because the Eagles had no idea what they were doing.
There was the year where Nate Geary was the linebacker. And you would come in on a Monday and you'd be like, you got to get 47 off the field. I mean, because teams are going into a game plan and saying, where's 47? Let's go after him. And they would just attack him. And it felt like on Sunday that the Giants said, if the Eagles are going to drop Sweat and or Reddick into coverage, we're just going to run a third receiver right behind the coverage. We'll roll the quarterback out. Those guys will come after the quarterback, and there we are, wide open with nobody around them. And it's like that happened. You don't get 22, 33-yard receptions all game long. So it seemed malpractice of what was happening. But I would ask you this question. You talk about the talent and the drop-off. A lot of guys were here last year. Bradbury, Slay, Reddick, Sweat, Fletcher, Graham. Now, I know the safeties are different. The linebackers are different. But are we suggesting that the drop-off of those core players is so significant, or is this a scheme thing?
As far as returning players, I think
Because if I was to
What I
say,
just-
look, you look at last year's defense, you got a lot of the same core guys. They had 70 sacks, and these are, Slay, Bradbury, both guys here. Sweat, Reddick, both guys here. Fletcher, Cox, and Brandon Graham, both guys here.
I think in some cases the answer to that is yes, Mike. I think James Bradbury is not the player that he was last year. That's very obvious. I think Josh Sweat is not the player that he was last year.
So that's
for
two guys
that
two guys that we're definitively saying have dropped off. Yes,
and I will say this: that Reed Blankenship, I believe it's not that is I think is you come back when you outplay your draft or non-draft status, and then B, this new style of I think I can't get in his head, but when you see a guy sort of who's known for being like a step ahead and a great processor, and that's how he got to where he was, starting to get completely lost, I think that's because he's thinking a whole lot, right? Like things are in his head, like this is a different style, I'm not, or he's either trying to compensate, but he is not for the last about 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even longer. He hasn't played the heady type of football that he was playing last year and earlier this year. And I have to think that that's a byproduct of the defensive play calling switch and them doing new things and he just not being totally comfortable with him and the environment around him. Usually you see that when players are pressing or where they're, how they say, if it's in your head, you can't play fast, you can't play instinctively. And that's what you're seeing from Reed Blankenship right now. No, the instincts aren't there. The awareness isn't there, and he's just not making plays. So that's 3 guys right there. Slay has been hurt for the last 3 or 4 weeks, so that obviously has impacted how they played defense. And then in the pass rush, you don't have Hargrave from last year. And again, I think you're getting good stuff out of Reddick, but it's different now when you got only one guy causing a lot of pressure compared to 3 or 4.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. Jeff, let's flip over to offense. The Giants blitzed this team to death last week. I would imagine Todd Bowles said, hey, I could do that too. So what do we know about Hurts, the blitz, and what we think could happen with this offense on Monday night?
Well, we have a great analytics intern with us named Sam Finkel, and he has a story up on our website right now. Headline is Feeling the Heat, and it's really a detailed look at how Jalen Hurts has performed against the blitz this year. He's been the second most blitzed quarterback in the league. His numbers are actually not that terrible when you look at it the whole year. But to your point on the Bucs came after him. The Bucs, who, by the way, have the 3rd highest blitz percentage in the league, they came after him on 61% of his dropbacks in week 3. That's a whole lot, and that's back when the Eagles were playing well and the Bucs were still trying to find themselves as a team. The tables have almost been turned as the Bucs ended the year on a good note, other than that one really bad loss they had. I think was it Atlanta? I forget. New Orleans. And the Eagles obviously did not end the season well. So what do we know? We know Todd Bowles wants to blitz anyway. We know Todd Bowles has now faced – this will be the 4th time Todd Bowles is facing Jalen Hurts, right? Because remember the 2 times they faced him 2 years ago, and then obviously again this year, almost similar, 2 times, Thursday night and a Monday night playoff game. So he's going to get blitzed. He's going to obviously see the tape from last week. He's going to see a couple of things. He's going to see that it's not just all on the hot routes, that there were major protection issues from the offensive line at times. There were major issues from Jalen Hurts having the awareness to know that if they're going to bring 6 or 7, then I've got to be able to get into a quicker drop and know where I want to go with the ball. I know everybody's complaining about hot routes, but there certainly are routes built into plays that you can see that are meant to beat a blitz if they're not quote-unquote hot routes. And then the other thing they are going to see are a variety of blitzes in which the play call and play design was not good enough to beat that blitz. So that's basically like, giving candy to a baby for Todd Bowles, and he's going to try to exploit all of that.
Yeah, I know that, some people would say that's a basic thing in an offense, right? How do you not have those things built in? And I guess the question is, it's like the chicken or the egg. Is it not built in? Is it Hurts that's missing the hot route? Which one are we looking at here as what's a bigger part of the problem? Is it that the offense doesn't have it or that Hurts is missing it? or the receiver. Like,
yeah.
I happened to be watching the game, and they showed an aerial view of a play, and I'm watching the play, and I said, none of these receivers turned around. They're all running fly patterns straight down the field on like a third down, and, that's one play. So anybody can take that one play, dissect it, and say, see, they don't do it right. That's one play.
Right.
But what do you see from that?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I think all three cases, quarterback awareness, offensive line awareness, and play calling design were all conspiring against the Eagles. But you're right. You can look at one snapshot and say, oh, well, see, the play calling stinks. They don't know how to prepare for a blitz. Come on. They didn't spend an entire week of practice last week against Wink Martindale, who they faced many times, and not think they were going to get blitz. They had routes designed to beat certain blitzes. Now, maybe they got different blitzes than they were expecting. That's all part of the cat and mouse game. It's not just on the route concepts, although that was a part of it. And I'll add a fourth thing in there, Mike. There were times where I thought, oh, man, like if that was A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith that got off that press coverage on a blitz, right, then Jalen Hurts probably has a completion there. But it's Olamide Zaccheaus, or it's Julio Jones, who's much older now, or it's Quez Watkins. So when you take all that, when you add that fourth thing into it, right, where he does want to throw the ball, he does have the awareness, the line picks it up, but my God, who am I going to throw it to? Even the adjusted routes are not getting open. It's just a recipe for a bad offensive day.
And I think one of the things, if you just take a step back, because Brian Johnson's getting head coaching jobs, and of course it's like Gannon, drive him to the airport, I'll pack your bags, everybody's ready to move on from Brian Johnson. I would ask the question in this way, Geoff. You got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Swift, the best offensive line in football rated by Pro Football Focus for whatever that's worth, and Jalen Hurts, who was second in the MVP voting. So you might ask, you have talent on this offense. Why are you struggling? Is it as simple to say it's got to be the play calling and the play design?
No, like I said, there's a lot of layers to this. And remember, when I think fans and local media, all of us, I'm not absolving myself by any means, but we do know that there are more impatient people among us in either the fan or the media base. But those people tend to weigh losses heavier than they weigh wins. I mean, does anybody have more quality wins this year than the Philadelphia Eagles? I mean, how many playoff teams have they beaten? They've five or six?
Right. I think they have the best record in football against playoff opponents. I think they were 6-2 against playoff teams.
Right. So we have to remember that that's how the league will view people as a whole, like coaching candidate. They're going to look at Brian Johnson and say, it's a winning culture. This team has now won double-digit games. They went to a Super Bowl the year before, double-digit wins, 2 straight years. Yeah, they're struggling here down the stretch, but they're going to – Brian Johnson was someone who even last year was regarded as a head coaching candidate, and now he's been a coordinator. So that's all my point of saying that I don't think that teams around the league view like small pockets of either success or failure in the big picture.
Yep.
Like Dan Campbell, I think we'd all agree, has done a pretty good job, right? Coaching Detroit, building up that franchise. Now, I forget where he was in 2020.
Miami.
I think he was with Miami.
I think he was an intern. He was the interim coach in Miami for, I think after Flores maybe got
I think you're right. But like, go look at Miami's seasons, before that, before Mike McDaniel arrived, and they weren't so great, right? They had plenty of seasons that were not outstanding. In fact, yeah, he was with he was with the Saints.
The Saints.
Yeah,
he was with Miami. He was with Miami before that, and then he was with the Saints.
He was with the Saints. So go. I don't have it on me, but if you go look at like the Saints record in 2020, that maybe Breeze's last. The point I'm just trying to make really is, he was on some teams, I'm sure, and going back to Miami, like where not everything was successful. Actually, the Saints were pretty good in 2000. They were 12-4. So maybe he's not the best example. But my point is, the league will look at candidates more based on the culture they want these guys to bring in, their history, not just where they were last, but all together, of college, who they've worked with, what they've done. So that the league views it differently than obviously the locals do. And by the way, Jonathan Gannon's a good point. You can you can say what you want about Gannon, and you could have said he'll be a crappy head coach because of what he did in his last year with the Eagles, only having the number 2 ranked defense. But he did a good job in Arizona this year. They were a competitive team. They went into Pittsburgh and won. They went into Philadelphia and won. They beat the Cowboys, right? They probably have more wins against playoff teams than most teams that are going to be picking in the lottery.
And they played a lot of competitive games this year.
Yes.
Moshe, we'll leave you with this. Obviously, Monday night, it's 5-4. You're on the road. Darius Slay today said it's probably better that we get to go on the road. We don't need booze. That's an interesting part of this whole thing is the psyche of where this team seems to be. But do you think in your mind the psyche of this organization and this coaching staff is if they're a one-and-done team, changes are a-coming, and I mean big ones?
I think I think any coach, position, coordinator, whatever, on the Philadelphia Eagles, if that coach does not know the history of the organization when they take the job, then that's on them. I'm going to guess that most of them do, and I'm going to guess that most of those coaches know that even if it's not one and done, even if they beat the Bucs and then go get their asses – I'm sorry, yeah, we can say that, right? Go get beat up badly against the 49ers or Cowboys, whoever they wind up playing, that changes, a lot of them are going to happen.
Nick Sirianni changes, or is he safe?
I'm not there, Mike. I mean, I think, there's always the opposite. Remember, Jeffrey Lurie fired Doug Peterson 3 years removed from a Super Bowl, not because of Doug's awful final season. Obviously that contributed to having some discussions about how the franchise was going, but it was more about their vision for how to get the franchise back on track that they did not share the same way. So, if Nick Sirianni loses by 35 points to the Bucs, then I think everything's on the table, right? But I don't think that's going to happen. If he loses, though, and it's just an ugly game, 2015, 26, who knows? I think that he and Jeffrey are going to obviously have the same conversation that Jeffrey would have with any coach after the season, and they're going to talk about how they fix it. But I would have to think that they would have to not have the same vision. But if you're Nick Sirianni, how do you not have a vision about rehauling your defensive staff? And
I also think Sirianni is in a different spot than Doug. I mean, he went – see, if Sirianni got fired today, would he be a candidate and hired by somebody? Or do you think that he understands that this is his job, and if he doesn't have it, he might not get another chance? I mean, Doug, to me –
I think he would get another shot.
You think so? Okay, because Doug, to me, wins a Super Bowl. He knows he's getting another job. So he can push back and say, I'm not doing what you're asking me. I'll go work someplace else. I don't know that Sirianni believes that he's going to get hired immedially. I mean, he's been a little brash around the league. And
yeah, you make a good point. He wasn't exactly anybody's first choice other than the Eagles a couple of years ago. I mean, it's hard to win as much as he has and not. I mean, 3 out of 3 playoffs, that's pretty good because most teams you have to inherit a bad team and get to it. I think he will be viewed as someone who definitely got a good roster handed to him. Yeah. When he got there, he had a great offensive and defensive line and then got more. So that will be held against him. But I do think he would land another job.
Chip Kelly did get another job. He got fired. He did get another job right away, too. San Francisco hired him right away because he did win a lot of games here. So Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. What is your schedule for Monday night?
Well, we'll have a podcast that'll drop that morning just to kind of go through the last-minute injury intel that we get and matchups. And then at 5 o'clock p.m., we'll have Inside the Birds game live with myself, Adam, Greg Cosell, and Jason Avant.
All right, very good.
And then, of course, after we'll have Inside the Birds game.
Good stuff. Check out their YouTube channel and all their social media platforms for that. And Moshe will be on Monday's show. We'll get his go. Thanks, Moshe.
You got it, Mike. Take care.